The conflict between Israel and Hamas continues into its second week. The big question at the moment pertains to the fate of the 2 million refugees that this conflict will create out of Palestinian citizens. On the other hand, people across the West are taking to the streets in mass protest against what is being called Israeli extermination of the Palestinian people. With China's increasing influence in the Islamic nations and America and Europe losing their collective heads over protests and clashes, is this endgame set up to benefit China? Let's take a look at why this is a problem for America, and then we can take our conversation forward with our panelists. Joining me on the show at this point in time is Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, former diplomat. Mr. Sumit Peer, senior political commentator, also joins us for this important conversation. Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, also with us on the show. In fact, I'm going to go over to the big screen, try and show you what exactly we are talking about here. This is indeed a concern for America, knowing the fact that the conversation between the Americans, the conversation that takes place between the communities at this point in time in the country of USA is going to be significantly impacting what the problem for America is. If you look at the demographics, the Jewish population is 1.9% and the Muslim population is 0.9%. In fact, some of the prominent leaders, including Anthony Blinken, are of Jewish origin. U.S. Secretary of State, of course, that's Mr. Anthony Blinken, and of course other dignitaries, including Mark Zuckerberg, Jan Koum, and Doug Emhoff, who's of course the second gentleman of the USA, Kamala Harris's husband. Prominent Muslim, in fact, leaders, of course, Ilhan Omar, who's been a open and vocal critic of India. Andre Carson, another one. Reza Aslan, a very prominent writer. He's, of course, a Muslim. He sparred on Sean Hannity a number of times. Rashida Tlaib is another one of those important and influential Muslims who continue to wield a lot of influence in the country of America. In fact, I'm going to start my conversation now with Sumit Peer. Sumit, is America in trouble? You know, there is this divide that has been subtle so far in the United States, but because of what's happening with Israel and Palestine at this point in time, do you think that this divide, these fissures that have existed for a very long time between the Jewish and the Muslim community in the United States are going to widen, are going to deepen? In fact, we saw in Paris, we saw in New York, we saw in Los Angeles, we saw in Houston, San Diego, San Francisco. There have been protests everywhere against what Israel is doing to Palestine, or what they think Israel is doing to Palestine. Sumit Peer.
Vinny, thanks for having me on your show. You are absolutely right. There have been always undercurrents. And for the sake of viewers, what is Middle East? Middle East is a whirlpool of constant undercurrents, where undercurrents never die. So if you look at these divisions, they have been very visible, but everything has to reach a tipping point. I think world has reached a tipping point. Let me quote General Lloyd Austin. What did he say a couple of days back? I think 2 days back. He said, there is no space for neutrality now. It is General Lloyd Austin, who is the Secretary of Defense or the Defense Minister of the United States of America. He says there is no space for neutrality now. It's a 26-11 kind of a situation. What did the Americans say in 26? Either you're with us, you are with them. There is nothing in between. So that is where the situation has risen. People have funded, the Arabs have funded a lot of American universities. For example, the university where I come from, Cornell, it has got a funding of $1.5 billion from the Arab countries. They've recently done a big, some around, I think, few $100 million of some programs with Qatar. So there are universities in the United States which are funded by the Arab money. And so getting these protests and getting them waked up and having a few people going here and there, that is what it is going to be. But Americans have to choose, Vinny. It was not an invasion of Israel. It was not an intrusion of Israel. It was an invasion of Israel. This model is being perfected by Hamas, Hezbollah, and few other countries. I'm telling you, if this model works, a lot of smaller states, a lot of smaller countries are under existential threat. Whatever happened in Israel and whatever happened to Israel, for example, it is repeated to Singapore. Is it impossible? It can be very easily done. There are a lot of countries, there are a lot of places in the world where people and countries are vulnerable. They are trying this model. Remember, first the model was tried in Kashmir, then it was tried in Leicester, and now it will be tried somewhere else. So it's a big plan wherein they are all got together, and the main people who are funding it are Iran and China. Let's not be naive about themselves. And the biggest person who is enjoying its sting back in the United States of America is not Donald Trump. No. It's not even Joe Biden. His name is Barack Hussein Obama. He's enjoying the party he has created. Iran was under embargo, $4 billion of foreign exchange reserves. They could sell 3.5 lakh barrels of oil in a day. When he came, he defroze all their assets. He let them have a good time. Now they were allowed to sell millions of barrels of oil. What is Iran's foreign exchange reserve today? $80 billion. Under his empire, I want to say, China was built up. The biggest Frankenstein of the United States of America, and the people who are funding this war in Middle East is China and Iran. Iran's foreign minister has met Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrullah, Islamic Jihad, Al-Hilali, Houthis, could name any jihadi militia in Middle East. Everybody is in touch with the foreign minister of Islamic Republic of Iran. So if you look at all this, what is happening, and what did he do? As long as the Susan Rice had access to the White House, she made Biden go and fight a war with Russia and Ukraine. Now there's a very classical situation. Russia is Christian, Ukraine are Christian. Christians are killing each other. And the Pope and all are very happy with it. They have no problems with it. And here, the Muslims are trying to get together and massacre Jews, to end Jews. And what does the Hamas Charter say? Hamas Charter says, it is my duty to kill Jews anywhere in the world, not only in Israel, anywhere in the world. And what did the Hezbollah number 2 told us 48 hours back? I'll start with Hezbollah. I will start with Jews, then we'll go to Christians, then we'll come to Hindus. That is what there's an official notification issued by them. So this is what is happening in the world. If people want to be ostrich, you have to wake up. Today, the war will have a limited damage. There will be collateral damage for sure. But tomorrow when it erupts, there will be catastrophic damage. World has to choose between collateral damage or catastrophic damage is the one you have to choose. Because I believe everybody has a right to existence, and Jews, and for that matter, our friends in Israel have a right to exist. Nobody can run a charter that my charter is to kill them. And people say that the people of Gaza are not with Jews. There have been 2 elections where Hamas has won. So majority of the people are with Jews. When these tunnels are built in Gaza, don't tell me people in Gaza don't know where the tunnels are. Where every school, every mosque becomes an ammunition dump, and every hospital becomes an ammunition dump. Don't tell me people of Gaza don't know it. And when 19,000 people go to Israel and come back in work, and this is what they give in return to the Israel. And we need. There's one gentleman I'm getting is Omad something. His name is a Jewish guy. He set up data centers. He set up a lot of BPOs, KPOs in Gaza. He put billions of dollars in Gaza. Do you know to do what? To give them employment. And they got employment from that. He had an only daughter named Daniel. You know where was she killed? She was killed in the music festival. She told these jihadis, I am the daughter of this man who has given you everything. They told him, no, we have to then definitely kill you. Now, this is the reality what you're facing. Imagine we got attacked and we bombed the shit out of the Jaish Muhammad and all. Now, what do you expect these people to do? Peace talks so that tomorrow Hezbollah and Hamas jointly attack them? Or maybe this Islamic Jihad and all get together and attack them. And what is Iran doing? Iran has got 1.5 million jihadis around Israel. Point number 1. They are running a recruitment drive where people, even kids, can apply. They are claiming they have already got 3.5 million people enrolled for jihad. And at the Iranian army of 900K, I'm talking of plus minus 40 lakh people are surrounding Israel. And what is the population of Israel? It's as good as Singapore. Very small country and surrounded by 10 times the size of its population by people who want to destroy you, who want to destroy anything about you, who want to even kill your children and burn your babies alive. That is the reality of the today's world. If you are delaying it, you will have a catastrophe which will go out of the control. Right. If you want to do it now, you will have a collateral damage. Catastrophe and collateral damage. Choose one.
Right. In fact, Ambassador Kapoor, the good points there. So, Ambassador Kapoor, the problem for the Americans at this point is going to be the stance that they have always taken when it comes to taking care of Israel, and secondly, the internal weakness that they are suffering from, which even China is looking to exploit. How is this going to pan out for the Americans? Because obviously, it's a two-front war for America. Of course, one is on the outside and one on the inside.
By people who want to destroy.
For America, it's a very difficult situation because.
So we have someone whose television is on. We are getting that echo. We are getting that feedback. We request you to please shut it off. Ambassador Kapoor.
So for America, it's a very, very difficult situation because the Russia-Ukraine war, they are heavily invested in already. They have been putting in a huge amount of money and support and garnering support from the Western countries to see how they can impact Russia and try to defeat it over time. Now, if so much of their energies and resources have been invested there and their attention has been focused there, now for them to open a second front in West Asia between Israel and Palestine and Hamas, not Palestine, but Israel and Hamas, and then invest themselves heavily into that is going to be not an easy objective. On the other hand, they have also announced some amount of aid for the Palestinians. All this is going to add to a lot of distraction because earlier there was not so much of internal fighting in America. If I see US about 10, 15 years back, now there is a lot of internal dynamics where you have a lot of Muslim senators and congressmen at the state level and even at the federal level who are fighting for the Islamic cause and supporting Hamas. Even on an issue like the hospital bombing case, where it is very clear that Israel would have had no motive or no interest to do an act whereby it would have lost global support and sympathy. Still, for the entire Muslim leadership in the US to blame Israel for this hospital attack, even though they would know that it is a wrong statement, but they go on absolutely firmly saying that Israel has done that and we condemn it. Now, the Arab world itself is doing it, the Muslim world is doing it, except for a few countries who are not vocal about it. But most of the Muslim world is continuing to put the blame on Israel in spite of the knowing the facts of the case on the ground. So for the world itself and for the US, it is a very, very difficult situation. Who stands to gain from this? The primary country which stands to gain from all this is China, of course, because for it to have US distracted and weakened over time makes its job in Taiwan a lot easier, makes its jobs in other parts of the bordering areas a lot easier because they have laid claims to a lot of territory of other countries, including India. They have laid claims to a lot of islands of other countries around their own periphery, which belong to other countries, but they say it is those islands are theirs. So over time, it only strengthens China primarily. The other countries who benefit from continuing and expanding theater of war in the Middle East are Russia and Iran. So they will fuel the fire very, very happily. Iran is, of course, very, very adept at it in the sense that they have been. Hamas did not have this sort of capacity to bomb, Israel with 5,000 rockets over a matter of hours, or to carry out the attacks the way they did with all their sophisticated, methods and templates. Now, the Muslim world also has to sit down and think whether they are doing the right thing by supporting a terrorist organization like Hamas. Its only goal is to wipe out Israel from the map of the world and to wipe out Jews. Now, the Jews have a right to exist. So they have to understand that. They have to sit down and realize that this is a very difficult situation for the world and for themselves, because a lot of it is going to backfire on them as the days go along. Now, all the Muslim countries of the world refuse to take Muslim refugees. Even in this case, Egypt has said they will not allow, Palestinians to come to Egypt. Jordan has said the same thing. So it is very tragic for the Muslims themselves to see the situation that they are heading towards in the future. And then they have these madrasas all over the world, including in India, where children go in at the age of 4 and 5 and are trained primarily in what? That you have to kill kafirs, if you are a true Muslim, and even if you die in the process, it's a very noble act. You don't have to worry. So you are being trained to be a terrorist from birth practically. And that training continues in the masjids and mosques by the Maulvis and mullahs. Now, how does the world cope with this? It's a very serious existential threat, not for small countries like Sumit Peer mentioned. I think it's an existential threat even for countries like India, because if you have radicalized Muslims to this extent, and I have seen the images when the October 7 attack broke out, most of the people from Palestine, from Hamas side, were, maybe children who were 15 years old, 20 years old. Most of the people who were attacking and kidnapping and killing the Jews in Israel were very young. So if they have been brainwashed to this extent that killing, raping, burning, beheading babies, raping, kids is their right, and then they have to kidnap them and bring them back as hostages. And the templates that you are creating for the world are very, very dangerous. And the Muslim world has to sit together also amongst themselves and with the others to understand that this is not the right way for the world to proceed, for humanity to get together and work towards the future, towards development, towards economic growth is more important. Some countries in the Arab world were on that trajectory. Some of them have now got distracted, like Saudi Arabia, with this attack and are blaming Israel and not Hamas. So they have to also realize that it is not good for them in the long term. Back to you, Vinny.
Gautam, what happened to the Islamic Ummah at this point in time? What happened to those 56 countries who were, always ready to help their brothers? Why aren't they taking in these refugees? Why is this a crisis that the Americans and the European community has to jump in once again?
Well, the point is that nobody is particularly fond of the Palestinians. They are a millstone around the neck of moderate Arabs, kingdoms, emirates, sultanates. They don't know what to do with these people. I've lived in the Gulf for over 10 years, and it was very difficult for a Palestinian or a Lebanese to get into Oman, where I worked. A number of them exist in the UAE because the UAE was more cosmopolitan, but they're not very happy with them. They are a fractious lot who create trouble and have lived in a warlike situation all their lives, for generations now, the Lebanese and the Palestinians. Libya took some in, they also had problems with them, and so on. Now, so on the one hand, I think the present situation is only responding to the outcry on the street, which is largely Palestinian. Let us remember that there's a large contingent of Palestinians in Jordan. There's a lot of Palestinians and Lebanese in the United States. A lot meaning not in proportion with their population, but a vocal minority that can always make a noise. You had this happening in Sydney right on the 7th, when a lot of Palestinians were yelling, "Gas the Jews," in front of the Opera House. Okay, now to take a bigger view of this, let us understand that from the Second World War onwards, it is proxy wars that have always occurred. Various places in the world, Africa, Asia, Middle East, proxy wars, where both sides, the Russians on the one hand, the Americans on the other, now China, Iran, all of these countries work from the back, and there's somebody else on the firing line. This has gone on, and this is what is happening now. The real challenge here is ironically not to Israel, but to the United States. The United States is sponsoring two whole wars, one in Ukraine, and now all of a sudden it has been thrust into a new war in Israel, which is threatening to be as big as the Yom Kippur War of 1973, 50 years ago. Now, it is very clear.
All right, Gautam, hold on to that. Modi has spoken to the president of the Palestinian Authority. He has spoken to His Excellency Mahmoud Abbas and conveyed, in fact, I'm reading out from what the Prime Minister said, conveyed my condolences at the loss of civilian lives at Al-Ahli Hospital in Gaza. We will continue to send humanitarian assistance for the Palestinian people and share our deepest concern at the terrorism, the violence and the deteriorating security situation in the region. He reiterated India's long-standing principled position on the Israel-Palestine issue. Right, Gautam, continue.
Yeah, so this is really America's war versus Iran and Russia and China. Now, I think it has no option but to proceed with, even if this escalates into a three-front war. America has to back Israel and they've said as much that we will do exactly that. Iran, if it chances its arm too much, there is a possibility of its entire situation being retarded 50 years by the Americans in a direct attack and the fall of the present regime. So it isn't a cakewalk for anyone. As for the media noise in America, I think it can be safely ignored because a lot of those media outlets are bankrupt and will sing the tune of whoever pays them, which in this instance would be the Arabs as well as China. Now, coming back to the Middle East and North Africa, moderate regimes really want nothing to do with Palestine. They do not want an independent Palestine because their political systems are different with kings and emirs in a lot of the cases. What they would like is for the noise on the street to die down so that they could get on with business as usual, which is to build links with Israel and isolate Palestine further. This is what's happening. It isn't really what it appears to be. The hysteria is temporary, and I do not think an Islamic jihad has any chance of winning. This is the 21st century, not the 14th. And this kind of talk, and we will wipe you out and we will take you over. And if we are 16% in your country, then it's the beginning of the end. It's all nonsense. It's nonsense, and it will be proved to be nonsense. And if the people, again, China will not get directly involved, but it might just provoke Iran into a military position. And if it does, God help Iran. Vineet.
All right. On that note, we've come to the end of this particular conversation. But of course, we're going to continue monitoring and talking about this very sensitive, this very fragile situation that is, of course, turning a tide around the world.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.